Chartgate. It's the Democrats' newest failure as they struggle to understand basic inflation charts. Case in point, Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy reacting to an electricity chart with, quote, "This is important, especially that part about costs going up because Trump is making them go up, not because of natural economic factors."
Little does he know, the chart is showcasing their own Biden-era failures, showing sky-high electricity prices shooting up from 2021 to 2024. And it doesn't end there. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer doing the same thing with Joe Biden's hefty utility price hikes, and the Democrats' majority PAC jumping on the bandwagon with the soaring cost of beef under Biden.
Now, we've seen these self-owning charts before. The Democratic Party's official X account guilty of this back in July, along with, yes, Minnesota once again, Senator Amy Klobuchar, all contributing to the slow-motion train wreck that is the Democrats' affordability message. Joining us now, Committee to Unleash Prosperity co-founder and the king of charts, who would never make this mistake, Steve Moore. Good to see you, sir.
Hey guys, how great is it to be in New York at Christmas time?
It's great. No, it's good to have you here. Lots of cheer in the air. Not so cheery, though, if you're a Democrat making these charts. And you keep pointing back to Biden and the failures under his administration. What's going on with these guys?
So if you look at those charts, they're amazing because they actually make our point, not their point, which is that in Trump's first term, there was very little inflation, about 2%. And then it went up to 9% under Biden, and it stayed high throughout his whole presidency. And they have these charts, and you look at them and you say, well, look at how much inflation has gone up under Trump. And then you realize, no, that's under Biden. So here's a statistic for everybody to remember. Right. 88% of the increase in prices that people are complaining about, like my wife when she goes buys a steak or ground beef at the grocery store, 88% of those increases are under Biden, not Donald Trump, since COVID hit. You mentioned electricity prices. That's an interesting one.
That's a big one. I mean, people are really paying attention.
So
to
a couple points about this. Number one, Trump is the one who's drill baby drill, wants to produce as much energy as we possibly can. We get a huge amount of our electric power from natural gas. Remember, it was Biden who wanted to shut down fossil fuels. But the really interesting point here is, guess what states have the highest electricity prices?
Of course, the blue ones.
Of course. New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Illinois, California. So the Democrats have a lot of nerve to say, what's with all these high electricity prices when it's in their states where it's worse?
Right.
And by the way, sometimes 2 to 3 times higher rates in the blue states than the red states.
Yeah, that's what makes that one particular X post just so outrageous about the electricity and utility prices. But there is right now, in this moment, kind of a push-pull that Democrats and Republicans are kind of wrestling for the messaging on the affordability crisis and playing the blame game. So you just so beautifully explained why the facts are actually wrong. The facts are actually on Trump's side, on the Republican side.
Look, the problem,
what do you think needs to happen?
Here's the problem for Trump. And I'm a Trump guy, I love Trump. But people, unfortunately, in politics, perception is reality, right? And if you look at these polls, Brian, you've been citing them. I mean, the polls do show, the Fox poll shows 57% of Americans are not rating the economy good under Trump. So he's got to he's got to keep getting out there and giving the American people the facts.
Yeah. And the best fact always is when you feel something in your pocketbook. I think it's so important for 2026 to be a year where people feel like their paychecks are
expanding. They will, because remember, the withholding changes at the beginning of January. So starting in January, a lot of workers are going to see a bigger paycheck. Less taxes taken out of their paycheck. Thank you, Donald Trump.
That's big, and everyone's waiting with bated breath for that. Now, I want to ask you about this too. Okay, we talk about debanking all the time. Okay, one of the big regulators, the Office of the Comptroller of Currency, has said, they've done a study and they've said, look, actually 9 of the biggest banks in America did engage in debanking in some way, shape, or form. And people care about this a lot. I'm curious to get your take on it, because you strike me as a guy who wants to find that root of the problem, but not throw the baby out with the bathwater in terms of how we think about the banks. How do you assess this whole issue?
So if you look at the evidence, it's pretty clear. There was some debanking, and there were some big banks that were engaged in this. But guess who put them up to it? It was the federal regulators under Biden who were forcing banks to debank people who were, maybe gun owners or people who were involved with fossil fuels. So it wasn't the banks that were doing it. They were doing it with the regulators with a gun at their head, figuratively, to do it. By the way, it doesn't, if you think about this, Brian, it doesn't make any sense. Why would a bank want to debank their own customers, right? They want more customers.
Typically, they want more customers, unless they're very ideologically
really
bent.
stupid. Right. And so this really is and by the way, there's something like 22 different agencies that regulate the banks. Maybe that's a few too many.
It's a lot to keep track of.
All the different industries that were impacted by this: gun manufacturers, crypto companies, payday lenders, energy producers. So pretty sweeping.
And by the way, every one of those that you just mentioned were the villains under the Biden administration. Trump likes those industries. He doesn't dislike them.
Right. I mean, but do you think there's anything to be said about, those industries are, they got a lot of money, they got some powerful lobbyists. I mean, could they have done more, to stand up for themselves? Should the banks have done more to push back on the regulators at the time?
The problem is almost like a cartel. I mean, the regulators were telling all of the banks, don't have them as your customers, don't do business with them. And it was, as you guys know, this was an attempt by the Biden administration to just crush these industries, the firearms industry, the fossil fuel industry, and as you mentioned, some of these other ones that Biden hates. And so the good news is, I think debanking is behind us now. I mean, Trump isn't into the debanking. He's not. His regulators aren't forcing companies to stop banking with them. So I think it was yesterday's problem. People are angry. Some of the banks were responsible because they bought into the whole wokeness.
Right.
Remember?
Yeah.
That's
they
what
bought
people,
into.
That's what they pay attention. They think some of these bank execs seemed a little too cozy with the ideology of the previous administration.
Well
we got to leave it there. The king of charts, Steve Moore, breaks it all down for